Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Michael and today we're going to be making some strawberry jam. So my original recipe made up to 12 of these little half pint jars, and I don't really want to make that much today. I'm just going to make half the recipe. So today's recipe is half of my original, and let's get started with that. So I've got a little plate here. This will come in handy later on, but we're going to put this little saucer in the freezer and I'll be right back, and I'll explain later what this is for. Let's get started now with the next process. We've got the star of the show today, which is our strawberries, and I've got 3 pounds of strawberries here, and we're going to go ahead and get those washed up. So I've got a large bowl here, and I'm going to take 3 parts water. So I've got 2 cups here of water, followed by another cup, and 1 part vinegar. Just give that a little mix through so that that gets all mixed together. And you can do this whether you're making jam or you're getting them in from the store. You want to make sure that they're clean. So we're just going to drop a few in here. We're going to let these sit in here for about a minute. We don't want them to sit in there too long. If you leave them in there too long, they'll get waterlogged, and we don't want that. So now that they've been soaking in this water now, I'm going to take them over to the sink and I'm going to give them a rinse, and I'm going to put them in a colander so they can drain. And I'll continue to wash the rest of these, and I'll be right back. All right, I've got my berries washed, and I did wash my container out before I put my berries back in it because you don't want to put it back into a dirty container. So this has been washed and ready to go now. So if you're planning on eating your strawberries now, then definitely go ahead and eat them. But if you're not and you want to put them back in the refrigerator, then put them on a paper towel and dry them off. You don't want to put them back in the refrigerator wet because it could start them getting soggy and they could start molding faster. So definitely once you put them back in after you've done that vinegar water test, put them in the refrigerator dry back in a container, and they'll be set to go for you to eat at a later date. All right, I wanted to see if you could see this. I don't know if you can or not. I'll hold this up. Can you see there's a lot of little debris in the bottom of it, and I didn't see any little crawly things crawling out of them, so we're set to go with this. So I'm going to go and give this a rinse out because I'm going to use this bowl when I cut my strawberries up, and I'll be right back. All right, on to the next step now for our jam. So I've got my bowls cleaned up. You want to make sure that everything is clean. You've got clean hands because you don't want to put any risk of putting any kind of bacteria or mold into your food. So definitely keep everything as clean as you possibly can. I've got my canner here. It has been cleaned. I've got my jars that have been cleaned. My lids have been washed and cleaned. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little multitasking here. And we're going to go ahead and put our jars in our canner and get those ready. So once you've washed your jars, either you can run them through the washing machine or you can wash them by hand. You want to make sure that you feel the top of them to make sure if you're using old jars or even new jars, you want to make sure that everything, there's no broken or any chips on any of your jars. So definitely check that out before you get started. Make sure you've got no chips or anything on the top because we want to make sure that that ring on that is going to get a perfectly sealed when we put that in. And we definitely don't want any cracked or chipped glass in our food. So definitely keep it watch on these as you're washing them and getting ready to put them into your water bath canner. So let's get started with that now. I've got my little basket here that I'm going to drop down into the pot here, and I'm going to go ahead and put my jars on the stove and have these heating up as I'm working on my strawberries, because you want everything out that you're going to have ready to go, because what's going to happen is everything's going to come together really fast. When the strawberries get through cooking, then we want to start the process for the canning, and we want everything to be warm and ready to go. You do not want to put hot food in a cold jar, so we're going to heat these up. So I'm going to go ahead and put these jars in the bottom of my canner, and we're going to make sure that everything is clean on the top. There's no breaks or chips on it. Give them one last look. Now that you've inspected your jars, we want to fill this up with water. So I've got just regular water here, and I'm going to show you a little hack here. What you want to do is you want to fill the jars with water here, and that way they don't float when you put your water in. So we're just going to go ahead and fill all these jars up with water, and we want to submerge these underwater. So I'm going to continue to fill up these jars. As you can see here, we just want to put water in them so that kind of weighs them down, so that when you put the water in the rest of your canner, they won't float to the top and take a chance of breaking. So I'm going to continue to fill these up. All right, I've got my jars now submerged underwater. I'm going to move these to the stove. You would already have yours on the stove, getting ready to do that, but I needed it here in front of the camera so you could see what we were looking at here. So the jars are under about 1 inch to 2 inches of water. So use the little trick, fill the jars with water first, and that way they're not floating all over the place. And then we will put this on the stove, and I'm going to put the lid on it and bring this up to just under a boil. So we don't want them boiling, we just want them hot. So now that I've got my jars on the stove and they're heating up, let's go ahead and get ready, starting with our strawberries here to get those prepared. There's different ways out there that you can make strawberry jam. You can buy the pectin in the store and use that. Just follow the instructions on the back of it. But we're not going to be using that today. We're just going to be using the berries, and I'm going to be using one Granny Smith. So I'm going to go ahead and take the caps off of these, and if there's any bad spots on them as I'm working through these, we definitely want to cut those off as we get these ready. So what we'll do is just go in here and just take the cap off the top of them. And then we're going to take it, and there's a little bit of a hard spot here in the middle. You can take that out if you want to as well. And that just easily comes out like that. They sell a little tool that you can buy that punches that right out of there. I don't have one of those, but if you do have one of those or would like to get one, then definitely that's the way to do it. So then we're just going to kind of cut them up a little bit. And if you see a little bit more of that in there that you want cut out of it, you can definitely cut that out of the middle. And my mom, when we used to make them, she didn't want any of the green or the white that's on strawberries, so we would always cut those out. So I don't see anything in these. These look pretty good. I'm going to continue to work on these. We're going to cut these down and put these in this bowl. And I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to get my 3 pounds of berries, and I'll be right back. I wanted to show you this one as I continue to work on these. See where that stem is down in there? You definitely want to take the knife and cut that out of there. You don't want that into your jam. So we'll just take that out. And with taking that out, that opened that up, that hole in there, so you can really see down into it. So I wanted to show you that. So we definitely want to take those hard spots out of them. All right, as I'm working on my strawberries, I wanted to show you what I was talking about earlier about the white spots on the strawberries. I don't put those in my jams right there, so if you see those on there, we'll just take that and cut that off of it. So I wanted to show you what that looked like in case it comes up in your strawberries when you're getting ready for your jam. So just take a knife and just cut that part of it off. And again, back to the center to take that hard core out of it. And I'm almost done, so I'll be back in just a few minutes. So I've got my strawberries all cut up now, and they're in little pieces. We want to kind of help it along, so when we start cooking it, they cook a little bit faster. So I've got my Granny Smith apple here, and I'm going to go ahead and take the skin off the outside of this. So I'm going to see if I can't do it the old-fashioned way and see if I can't get this in one big long strand. So that was always a big, well, I've already messed up. Always a big game when we were growing up. My mom taught us how to peel things, and you wanted to see if you could get it all in one big piece. So it was a competition between me and my sister when we were learning how to cook and things of doing this. So I've already messed up the top, but I'm going to continue to see if I can get this all the way down where it's one big long piece. Well, if I hadn't messed up at the beginning, I would have done it. So don't tell my sister, and I won't. But anyway, what I was talking about was that. So it was just something that my mom did for us when we were kids growing up, just to have something to do. And so there we go. We've got our apple peeled now. I'm going to take this apple core and I'm going to run it down in the middle of it. If you don't have one of these things are fantastic. They work really good. The apple core comes right out of it. You can see, don't have to worry about cutting it. And then we're just going to go ahead and just take the rest of this skin off of these. Like I said, the recipe that I've got here does call for Granny Smith apples. They are full of pectin. Strawberries are too, but just want to kind of add just a little bit more to it for your strawberries. That way they get a little bit better chance when they get ready to congeal up. So I'm going to go ahead and put this skin away. And then we're going to take the apple that we've got here, and I'm going to kind of julienne that or make it little matchsticks. Cut that up. So what we'll do with that is just kind of go through and just kind of cut it up, and then I'm going to stack it on top of it and just kind of run it through like that. So I've got little bitty pieces there for my apple. So I'm going to continue to work on this. If there's any hard spots in the apple, definitely take those out. You don't want that in your jam, because anything that's in there will stay in it. So definitely, if you see some hard spots like this one has one in it, just go ahead and cut that out. All right, my apple's all cut up, and I was just sitting there thinking it funny, you know, how certain things bring back memories and things when you do that. Just the simple slicing that apple open or peeling it brought back the memories of when I was a kid. So I've got just a little bit of water here, and I'm going to put the apple in it because I don't want it to start turning brown. It's like potatoes. When you peel those, they want to start turning brown really quickly. So they won't be in there very long because we're fixing to start cooking our berries and getting everything ready to go. All right, to kind of give our berries a little bit of a help here, I've got a Dutch oven that I'm going to be cooking mine in. And when you cook them, you want something that's got high walls on it, because when you start cooking your berries, they're going to start foaming up, and you want something that's got a really tall wall on it. But you could definitely, at this point, put your strawberries in here, and I've got a potato masher, and you could push them down in there and break them up. I transferred my strawberries back to my plastic container and used my potato masher to give them a good mash and give them a good head start. We're going to go ahead and put our other ingredients in. I've got my Granny Smith apple here. I'm going to drain the water off of this and I'll be right back. All right, I've got my Granny Smith here. I'm going to go ahead and put that into my mixture here with my strawberries. I've got 3 cups of sugar. We'll add that into the top of it. And lastly, I've got lemon juice. I'm not going to use fresh lemons. I'm going to use a store-bought lemon juice because you cannot control the acidity level in your lemons. You definitely want to make sure that this is stable, and you can get the stability with the store-bought lemon juice. So I'm going to give that a little bit of a shake up, and I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of my lemon juice. All right, we've got all of our ingredients in there now. We've got our strawberries, we've got our Granny Smith apple. That is optional. If you don't want to put that in there, you don't have to. You just have to cook it a little bit longer. And then we've got our 3 cups of sugar and our 2 tablespoons of real lemon juice. So now I'm going to turn on the heat. We're going to bring that up on high, and I want to bring this to a boil. So I've got me a wooden spoon here, and I'm just going to mix this through. All right, I've got everything mixed through now. We're going to bring this up to a boil. And from this point forward, you do not want to leave this. You can't be going off and doing other things because this will cook. And as it cooks down, you don't want it boiling over the top. You need to keep stirring on it so that doesn't happen. And you also don't want it sticking to the bottom. So when you get to this point, you want to make sure that you're constantly here with it, giving it a stir every occasion. And we're going to cook this for about 20 to 25 minutes. And we'll see at that point. So you remember that glass saucer that we had earlier? I put that in the refrigerator. I've actually put that in the freezer. We're going to use that to test our jam to see if it is ready or not, if the pectin has released in it, that it's going to solidify up into our jam. So that is what that is for, and I'll show you how we do that in just a few minutes. I've got a thermometer here. This is also another good way to test it. When your mixture gets to 220 degrees Fahrenheit, then you know that pretty much it's gelled where it's at. So that is another way we're going to test it today, is by temperature. So we're going to bring this up and keep stirring on this. And I will let you see this as we go through the process, but bring it up to a boil and do not turn it down. You want to keep it going to where it's constantly boiling, because you want that pectin to release so that your jam gets thick there when it's done. So I'm going to continue to work on this, and I'll be checking back with you 20 to 25 minutes, and I'll show you what this looks like when it gets ready to be gelled up. While we're waiting for our strawberries to come up to a boil, I wanted to show you this. As you get your lids and things out, this one I pulled out of there had a defect on it, so definitely you don't want that in your mixture. So I'll hold that up so you can see it, what that looks like, but that came out of the box that way. So definitely, if you get something that the little rubber gasket on the bottom is broken or defective, or any of the covering on the lid has come off, you definitely don't want to use these. You want to throw these away. You want really good lids. So with your rings and your lids, if you've got your rings, you can definitely use these again if they're in good shape. You don't want any rust on them. If you see any rust on them when you bring them back out to do your next candy, you want to throw that out because you don't want to use that one. Just get new ones. They're relatively cheap. I've got a video that I made, and I'll put the link in the description box below, where I went through all of the tools that I use for my canning process. So I've got my lids here, and they are clean, and I've still got my clean hands. But I'm going to go ahead and put those into a little pot of water. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. I was reading on the USDA site. Always check on that to make sure that things haven't changed when you're canning, because things change constantly over time. We used to, when I was a kid, I think I remember putting these in a thing and we'd bring them up to a boil. And so definitely don't want to have to do that now, but I'm just going to put them in some water just to bring them up a little bit of warm. I don't want them boiling. I just want them warmed up. They're not going to be as hot as the jars. So just put them in something, because I don't want to damage the little rubber seal. So just enough, just kind of bring the temperature up a little bit above room temperature, and make sure that they are clean and ready to go on your jars when you get ready to start your canning process. So we'll continue to let these berries come up to a boil. All right, I am back, and I wanted to show you what my strawberries look like. They have come up to a boil now. So at this point, we want to continue stirring these. You don't have to stir them constantly, but definitely want to keep stirring them enough that they're not going to stick to the bottom as these cook down. So don't go off and leave them, because in a few minutes it'll start foaming up. This foam on the top here will almost come to the top, So just by stirring it just a little bit, it'll keep it down in there. So. All right, I am back. It has been 25 minutes, and I wanted to show you what the mixture looked like, how it's cooked down. You can tell by looking at it how thick it is, that it's going to be a nice consistency. So I just want to let you see what this looks like. And now I'm going to go grab that little plate out of the freezer, and we're going to give this a test to see if it's gelled up. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I've got that plate that was in the freezer. I'm going to take just a little bit of my jam here, and I'm going to put it on this plate. I'm going to get just a little bit more. With it. You can already tell by looking at the spoon how that is hanging onto that really well. So I'm going to put this back in the freezer for 2 minutes, and I'll be right back. All right, it's been 2 minutes, and I want to show you, just take your clean finger, and if you run it through there, and if it stays in place and doesn't come together, then you know it's gelled up. So that's staying in place where that is. We're ready to start putting these into our jars. All right, before we start putting this in the jars, I wanted to give a little taste of this to see what it was going to taste like. So here we go. That is decadent. You're going to love this. So let's continue moving on. I'm going to get my jars out of my canner now, and we'll get ready to start putting these in. This is delicious. As you're taking your jars out of the canner, they're going to be really hot. I recommend getting one of these jar holders, and we're just going to set this over here on the side. I would not recommend using tongs. You don't want this slipping and breaking, and as you're putting it back in the canner, you definitely don't want it to break on that, and definitely don't want to be putting tongs on there and getting yourself burnt, because that is really hot. So again, let's take our jars out. We're going to dump the water out. As we pull them out, those will be empty, and we'll let these sit here at room temperature for just a second. All right, we are ready to start filling up our jars. I've got my jars here. I've got 6 there. I don't know if I'm gonna get 6 or not. This cooks down, might get 4 out of it, but definitely have extra just in case. You don't want to put as many as I turn out here, and your mixture not cooked down as enough as mine did, and then you run short on the jar. So have you some extra ones in your cooker there that are ready to go. So I want you to see what that's done while it's just sitting here, how that's really thickened up. That is really pretty jam. Okay, so I got my lids here. Like I said, I just heated them up just a little bit, just above room temperature. They're not hot. I've got my rings here ready to go. I did not put those in the water. There's no need for that. I've got my jars here. I've got my funnels. And this funnel here, if you've watched my previous video, is the one where you measure the headspace on them. With our jam today, we need a 1/4 inch headspace at the top of the jar. If you don't have one of these, and you went out and got you one of these debubblers, the debubblers here on the back, and we've got the measurements on the front here, 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 1 inch. You can use that to measure your headspace. How you use this tool is you just put it on the side of the jar, and the first notch there is 1/4, and that's what we're looking for, 1/4 inch headspace. So let's get started filling up our containers. I'm going to go ahead and put my jars here and put my funnel on it. If you've got one of these, you can definitely use one of those if you don't have one of these, and we're going to fill this up. All right, so I've got my contents in there now, so I'm going to look down and see where I'm at with that. I need just a little bit more in it. And again, your debubbler, we want to run around the inside of the jar with the debubbler, just in case there's any air pockets in it. We don't want those in there. And we're looking to see if we've got that 1/4 inch headspace. And we do. All right, so my jar has a 1/4 inch headspace on it, and I've got just a paper towel here with some white vinegar, and I want to make sure that this is really clean across the top, because I want to get a good seal on our jam. We don't want anything that's going to interfere with that. And you can feel also with this paper towel if you've got any chips and anything on your glass. That's your one last test for that. Now we're going to take our lid lifter. It has a magnet on the end of those. If you haven't seen my previous video, I did mention that also in there. You might want to pick one of those up, and it just grabs up the lid and it's ready to go. We'll put that on top of our jam. Make sure that is centered on there. We'll grab one of our lids and we're going to put that on. And we want this to be fingertip tight. And what that means is once you get it tight, you just want to give it one little twist, and that's all we want to do. And at that point, it is ready to go back into the canner. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and fill up my rest of my jars. We'll put them in the canner, and I'll be back in just a minute. All right, I've got all of my jars here. I had to get 4 out of this, and you can see I don't have any left in there. It come down right to 4 jars. So we're going to take our jar lifter here that we've got secured around the top. We're going to put it back in our water bath canner. Once you get all of your jars back in your water bath canner, you want to make sure you have at least 1 to 2 inches of water above the top of the jars so they can process. All right, there we go. I've got my jars back in the canner. I put the lid on it. Now we want to bring that up to a boil. And this is where you want to check your altitude where you're at, because you need to process it according to where you're at with the altitude. So check your altitude where you are for your processing time based on where you are. But where I am, it's at 1,000 feet, and it's going to be 10 minutes. Once it starts boiling, I set the timer for then, and then I'll turn off the flame and I'll let it sit in the water for 5 minutes, and I'll show you when we come back. Stay with me. All right, I am back, and I've got my jars out of the canner. When you take them out of the canner, don't tilt them sideways or anything like that. Just pull them straight up. Just pull them straight up out of the water, and there'll be a little bit of water on the top, and that's fine. You can just leave that on there like that. What we're looking for now is we're going to let these sit on the counter for 24 hours. We're just going to let them sit here. And if you've ever canned before, you might have heard that little ping, and that's this lid on this as it creates the seal going down to show that it's been sealed. So what we're looking for is listening for that ping to happen. So I should hear 4 of those here pretty soon. So after 24 hours, you can check it to make sure it's sealed, and you can store this on the shelf just like this without the ring on it. That way, when you put it on the shelf, you won't get a false seal. Maybe a couple of months down the road, it might lose its seal, and you definitely don't want it to get resealed back down again, because that could bring bacteria and mold into your food, and you don't want that. So you can store this on the shelf just like that, leave the ring off, use that for another day and another event. So let these sit on the counter here for 24 hours and check them and see how you've got your new strawberry preserves. And if you wanted to, with the 4 batches that I had here today, if you didn't want to can it, then after you get it put in the jars, you can definitely stop there and put it in the refrigerator, and then you can eat it right then. So definitely, if you want to continue with the canning process, you can do that. Or if you want to stop there, and after you get your jam made, put it in the refrigerator, or give a jar or 2 away to a friend. It's something you can do also. I hope this has inspired you, if you've canned in the past, to get out that canning supplies and put some things away for the summer, or wherever you are there. You can definitely do this year round. And if it is your first time, I hope you have learned something today that you can take from this and learn how to can and start the process and pass that on to somebody else you know. If you like this content, consider giving me a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. And don't forget to try one of these other 2 videos over here. You might find something else you like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in my next video. And let me know in the comment section how your canning turned out with your strawberry jam. I'd love to hear from you.